Well, this is DIY Dave here with an unexpected video. We're going to be fixing some damage I did to my 2015 Lexus ES 350. I was on my way to church one morning and accidentally drove the right front wheel over a curb. Done quite a bit of damage, and we're going to replace some parts today. Thought I'd bring you along. So let's take a look. When I drove into this curb, what happened was I had turned the corner onto a street, and the street tapers in just a little bit, and I was hugging the side of the road a little bit too close, and there was a driveway cutout, and since I was too close to the curb, I was going a little bit too straight, drove right into the curb. Now you see how this wheel is tilted in, pointing about 11 o'clock. Just for reference, here's the left front wheel. It's perfectly straight. So that tells you how severely the impact with the curb affected the direction of the tire, or the wheel. We're pointing in, oh gosh, we're fully 2 or 3 inches off of being straight here. Okay, so you can see the scuff marks around here where I actually hit the curb, and right here you can immediately tell this tire is blown out, which is not that big a deal. I was planning to replace those this summer. But what you can see when we evaluate the damage down here a little bit more completely is that we have bent this control arm right down here. What's a little less obvious is that we have also ruptured the boot on the ball joint, and grease has spewed all over the inside of this wheel. So we're going to be replacing this control arm, this ball joint, and I think on the opposite side, it's a little harder to see from here, but I have a fairly strong confidence that we have probably bent that tie rod, so we're going to replace that as well. But the biggest the biggest gorilla in the replacement is the fact that I believe we've also torn a boot on the CV axle. This was dripping grease. When I got it back home, I had to have it towed back, and big glops of grease were coming out of it. And I believe it is right where the CV axle goes back in. So I'm going to be replacing that. That's the biggest thing, and I've gone all OEM parts on this, especially with the CV axle. It was a little bit of a hassle to get the OEM parts. Some of them are on eternal back order, especially the CV axle. That was hard to find, but I did manage to find it. Even cross-referenced it with the Toyota part number, and a lot of the Toyota dealers around town wouldn't even order it. I happened to find one in stock here in Oklahoma City. So we're going to get this thing on jack stands. We're going to get, we're going to get this thing on my jack, my lift. We're going to take off the wheel, and we're going to get busy replacing all of these parts. So let's get started. Now, something else you can see here where the ball joint seal broke. You can see grease all in the inside of this, and this is kind of scuffed up on the inside. I am hoping against hope that I can get away without having to go fetch another wheel. Okay, I could not get a good angle on that with my impact, so I just got a regular ratcheting wrench, and put a little extra wrench on the end of that to get a little leverage, and it finally broke loose. The angle on that was just too bad, so we'll go underneath here and get the other 17 millimeter. Oh, man, that's going to be an interesting torque spec. That thing was on there brute tight. Okay, we've got the wheel off, we've got the caliper out of the way. And I'll tell you what, that caliper is stinking heavy. Had a little wire that we've got just hung off the side of the road, and I still may end up needing to move that even further once I slide the CV axle out. We're not sure yet, so for now it's out of the way. We'll see if we can manage it that way. But I wanted you to look first at the real first instance of damage you can see from my curb accident. Right now you can see through here at the dust shield, this is completely worn through where it hit, and it hit the bottom of the ball joint. It absolutely is rubbed through. Now I'm still going to try, and you can see actually where the wheel hit the bottom of this dust plate. So I'm still going to try to bend this back out, because as I said, I'm not going to pull this out. I'm not going to pull the wheel hub out. And I'm not going to replace the bearing. So we're going to go ahead and just try to press through with it. Now the other getting the control arm out is going to be a matter of taking out that bolt right there. We've got to remove a motor mount that is right back there. We'll have to jack up the engine to give it a little bit of support, because that has to be removed to access two, I believe they're 22mm bolts on the flat part of the mount for the control arm that are hidden by the motor mount. And then once we do that, we can slide that out, replace it with a new one. So I guess the next thing is
we're going to take off this axle nut.
As I was researching this, everything I read said that was a 32mm axle nut. And folks, that's too big. So just to test that theory, it's got to be a 32. I think it's got to be a 30. 32 is not fitting. It's not. It's just riding over the edges of it. So I got to go get a different bolt, a different nut, or socket. I'll get it right in a minute. You know what I mean. Back in a little bit.
I was using a new lapel microphone for the video, and noticed while I was editing that a couple of minutes of audio are simply gone. So I'm going to narrate over what I'm doing. Right now we're just using the impact with a 30mm 12-point socket to move that axle nut off. And now we're going to move underneath the control arm. It's worth pointing out that the two bolts at the edge of the control arm have nuts at the bottom with the bolts on the top. The back at the top of that triangle has the nut on the top and the bolt coming through the bottom. They're all 17mm. We're back here under the control arm. Going to take a pry bar and separate the control arm from the steering knuckle. The thing that you'll notice here, as the control arm separates, it will reveal the damage to the ball joint where they've come completely separated. You'll also see where the grease jacket has, or boot has failed, and that's where the grease came from that spewed all over the inside of the wheel. You can also see where that ball joint actually bent at the very end at the point of separation. And to a lesser degree, you can see how the bottom of that ball, the control arm, is bent. And here just verifying that we can push the CV axle through the wheel bearing.
Okay, just wanted to show you that I've got this wheel separated enough now where we can fairly readily access. There, we've got the CV axle is available to us. The CV axle involves releasing what I believe is a 14mm bolt and then a retaining clip that goes on farther back. The trick is whether or not there's what's called a carrier bearing that holds the weight of the axle on the passenger side only. There's no complement to this on the driver's side. Sometimes moisture gets in that carrier bearing and the axle seizes to the carrier bearing. I don't think we're going to have that problem. I'm going to be optimistic and say that we won't. So I think to free up the space that I need to get to the control arm, I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get that CV axle out. So we're going to press on. I'm going to try to reorient the camera underneath so you can see the CV axle and the retaining nut and the clip that we have to get past to get that thing out of the transaxle. Okay, we are underneath the car. You can see the CV axle here, and you can see the linkage right here. It got separated where you see all this grease coming out, and that's coming out in big globs. That's been coming out in globs ever since I did this. So, and that's why we're going to replace it. I've seen conflicting stories that you can get a kit that might let you reboot that at the end, but the only way you can really do that is if you take the axle out to begin with. Well, if I'm going to go to the effort to take it out because it was potentially damaged and damaged enough to do this, I'm just going to go ahead and replace it, because if it turns out that I reboot it and there's more damage hidden that I don't know about, I'm going to have to do the same thing, and I don't want to have to do this twice. Here is the, I believe this is a 14 millimeter retaining bolt that we need to loosen, and then I'm still trying to, oh, there is the clip right there. That's the clip for my gloved, that's the clip that you've got to take a pair of pliers and squeeze, slide off, and then pull out. And then once you loosen this guy, then you're supposed to be able to slide this puppy clear out of the transaxle. You're going to have to trust me that the bolt is right behind this main frame assembly here, and I showed it in the other shot just before this. So this is 14 millimeters, so I'm going to go ahead and spin that loose, and then get a pair of pliers to release this clip. That came out with no problem. There is a little bit of corrosion there, but we'll just have to deal with that. The tricky part is getting this clamp loose. So let's see what we can do. I've got a pair of Loctites here. I'm going to try to grab those. It's a little cramped. Okay, well, oh, there, I got it. Ha! C-clip is off. Okay, all that's left now is to pull the thing loose and see if we can navigate it past the carrier bearing, which, again, you can kind of see it. Not quite. I wish that camera angle were better. All we've got to do now is get this axle past this carrier bearing, out the CV axle, and we'll have this thing out. O-U-T, out. And I'm going to take my handy dandy pry tool and see how far we can come just right here. I think I'm going to go to the outside and see if I can persuade it to come from the opposite side, because I can't tell if the reason it's binding right now is because it's just mechanically into position, or if it's because it sees on the carrier bearing. I can't tell just yet. And we're going to see if we can make any progress. This is the simplest way. Trying to pull it from back there is non-starter. Hopefully, just by pulling this direction, if it's going to come out at all, okay, folks, we finally got it. And you know what I thought? It was about 3 layers of PB blaster on that carrier bearing. That was what our problem was. It was absolutely seized in.
I put about 3 or 4 blasts of PB blaster on that carrier bearing, and I just waited. And I took pry bar after pry bar, and I got some leverage. But you know what I actually found that really helped? It was a stinking pickle fork that I've got for loosening just old ball joints. It's relatively straight, so I was able to get in behind it and just hammer. And the bottom line, folks, is patience. There's no magic trick to it. You put the wedge, you wedge it in there against the fat part of that axle, tap, 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 and eventually you see over here on this side, you see the gap between the collar of the CV axle going into the transaxle itself. It opens up, and you realize you're finally having success. That combined with the PB blaster doing its job, and it finally has come loose. So we're ready to pull this puppy out. Since we finally got that puppy loose, let's go ahead and just pull this, see if we can't pull this thing on through. Ha! One each dead CV axle. And now we can look at this area where the separation occurred. This leak and separation, something occurred here that caused it to leak. There's where it rode in the carrier bearing. You can see with the PB blaster guide, and there are the splines where it engages in the transaxle itself. So all we got to do now is reverse the procedure. Go get the new transaxle, get the new CV axle, and reverse the process and put that clip back in, and we'll be in business. Okay folks, with the CV axle out, I now have a lot more room to work in the area where the control arm is. So I think what I'm going to do is, before I just slam the new CV axle in, I'm going to shift over and now work on taking out the control arm. Now to do that, we're going to have to take out the motor mount on the front side, and that will require lifting up the engine to give it a little bit of support when you take that out. And the only reason you take out the motor mount is to get access to 2 bolts that lock the control arm into the frame. So that's what we're going to do next. For the control arm, the left side assembly, there is a long 19mm bolt that is fastened with a 19mm nut on the other end. So I've got a 19mm wrench. I'm going to hold the top, and I'm going to spin the other one out, and then I'll show you the 22mm bolts that hold the other side in. Let's get this guy in here. Whoa. There, out, threads. Now the tricky part. The other part is where we have to take that motor mount out. So now, if I could aim ye old camera, and that there is one 22mm bolt. That's on the left side of this little flange that mounts to the frame. The other one is right there. You can see it, but you can't access it because of that motor mount. That motor mount has to come out. You don't have to replace it, it just has to come out so you can get to that flange bolt. The caliper, pardon my southern engineering on the wiring to hold that caliper out of the way. But there is the motor mount we've got to release. I'm going to double check, but I believe that may also be a 19mm bolt, top and bottom. So you can take the bolts out, and that's fine, but it still doesn't let you release the bolt. That's when you have to, it's when you have to elevate the engine just enough to let that mount out.
Well, in editing the video, I realized that I missed the shot where I spun out the bottom and top bolts on the motor mount. So we're going to skip beyond that.
There are 2 other bolts that hold the base of this fixture to the subframe. There's one under here and one under here. There are some little protective tabs. So what I think I'm going to have to do is take these 2 tabs out of the subframe, pull out those bolts, and that completely frees this lower bracket. So when I lift the engine, it's creating clearance that lets me try to knock this thing loose by kind of tapping down on it. Okay, there are just some little protective tabs. Yeah, these are just little plastic protective tabs I guess from, yeah, they just come right out. So we'll knock those guys out. I'm trying to do this while keeping the shot in frame, and the bolts are right there and right there, and I'm pretty sure those are 17 millimeter. So we'll go ahead and get those out. First of all, let's see if that's the right one. Sure enough, there's one. There's the other. Okay, they're both out. Let me get those separated so I can remember to put them in the right place later. Okay, we're going to give this a try and see how we go. Okay, we've gotten a little bit. Let's see how this goes now. I'm doing this by tiny increments at a time because I don't want this aha. Ooh. Okay, we're loose. Oh, we're so close. We're so close. I need another 1/8 of an inch. Ugh, this makes me very nervous. Not gonna lie. Moving the engine up like this makes me very nervous. Yay, we're out. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with the engine mount. We got it out. And our whole reason for doing that was to get to these nasty little beasts. And those are 22 millimeter. So, can we see that one right there? Yeah, we can. There's one. And there's the other. Now, there is a little flange on this side that I probably don't have on the new part. No, I don't. I just checked. So, we should be ready to free this guy up. This guy should be ready to come out. And there it is. There's the control arm, and it's, you know, it's a real shame too, because this thing is 10 years old. It's got about 70,000 miles on it, and this thing's in perfect shape. This bushing and this connection right here is fine. This is in great shape, except that it just got damaged. I mean, here's a side-by-side comparison of the damage. See, this is flat, and this is bent up a good 30 degrees, well, 25 degrees. Just and it looks like that's what took the brunt of the damage. I think as I'm disassembling this, I'm getting the impression that that's what took most of the damage. So we just take, looks to me like this piece slides off. We put that on the new piece, and we slide it back in. Okay, a little bit of contemplation, and I did look at a couple of other videos. One was a mobile mechanic who replaced a control arm in a 2014 Camry, which is very, very similar to this structure. I thought these were more like Avalons
but in this case it's very similar to a Camry. And what he did, he started reinserting the control arm by putting the ball joint into the knuckle first and then working the other two pieces in. Well, that reminded me that I still have half a broken ball joint sitting in the knuckle. So I'm going to regroup. I'm going to go back and get that broken ball joint out of the knuckle and then assemble the new ball joint onto the new control arm and then work backwards from there and try to get this assembled. So let's start by getting the new ball joint attached to the new control arm. All that boils down to is taking the new ball joint right here and putting it right there, and then putting the existing bolts right through. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay. So as we discussed, we're going to regroup. I found the bolts and just spun those in with my ratchet. They were 17 millimeter. Got those all put in, snugged them down good and tight, and I folded this ball joint in as far as I can because it's going to be a real sharp angle as we put it back in the knuckle. So we're going to set that aside for now. Okay, so here's the castle nut on the old broken ball joint. So what we've got to do is, here is the cotter pin for the old ball joint. I've got to lift that up, pull that cotter pin out, take this nut off, and then I got to whack this thing loose. So that may not be fun. I'm going to be optimistic. Hopefully we'll get it figured out, but that's what I got to do next. So I'm going to set you guys over here. So the first thing I got to do, the end of the cotter pin is right here. So I'm going to try to bend it out and get it straight, and then see if I can poke it back out this way. So let me go get some needle nose pliers and see if I can bend that pin out. Yeah, here we go. Almost. Come on. Come on now. Give up. You've done your job. Okay, it's fighting me, of course. Why wouldn't it? I need to go get a small pick to wedge that thing out. How little there is left. There we go. Ha! We killed it. Wow. How am I going to do this? Because I have nothing to hold this in place right now. Nothing at all. So I have nothing to counterbalance. Oh, ha, okay. It wasn't on that tight. Now, so that's out. So that turned out to be nothing. Now we got to get this guy out. There we go. My objective now is to take our new castle nut, and I'm going to get the new control arm at least into the steering knuckle. Now before I do that, I'm going to have to do some surgery on this dust plate because it's mangled like crazy. And I'm hoping we can salvage it, but I don't know. It's worse than I thought. And I saw it up front.
Whoa. Do not clunk Dave in the head. That is our number one rule, and we're gonna have to get this back up here. Okay, once again, I've got the, well, I thought I did. There. I've got the ball joint started, so let me put the castle nut on here. So I've at least got a fighting chance. I'm not there yet, but I've got a chance. No. Nope. This isn't gonna work. Try again. But we're not gonna get there from here. Okay, my battery light's going off, so I'm going to take a battery replacement break.
Okay, I've had the camera off for a while because this control arm has been an absolute brute, and I haven't had anything really worth filming. So I'll tell you what I did. It's not all the way in yet, despite appearances. What I ended up doing was I forced that end of the control arm in straight. Okay, I got it in straight and then fed the screw from the bottom and at least started the cap on top. It's not on snug tight yet. I then pivoted the control arm around such that those flanges are now hovering over the holes they're supposed to go in, but they're not absolutely flat against the subframe. I have been working back and forth trying to get the bolts in and just use the ratchet to drive them in and use that force to turn the to turn those flanges. But I've not been comfortable because I'm scared I'm going to strip out those bolts, and I don't want to do that. So that's where we are right now. I'm still kind of experimenting. I would really like to get this part of it done so I could put the motor mount back in and get the jack out from underneath the engine. That would be a great objective for today. I don't know if I'm going to have the gas to try to finish putting the CV axle in today. This may be a 2-day project. So it's 5:45 in the afternoon, and I've been at this straight since about 9 o'clock this morning. So I can tell that my gas tank is starting to run a little low, and but I'm going to continue to work on this and see if I can get the control arm in. Well, that bolt just went. That bolt just went all the way in. That's surprising. See if that will go in. See that? It is just not going in. It just doesn't. Ha! I got that puppy in. That is in. Hot, stinking dog. Awesome sauce.
It just took a little patience. Now that's not torqued. Okay, so the key was I took that screwdriver and I was able to leverage this edge of the flange forward just a little bit, and that let this thing start to go in. And it bit. It fought, but it bit, and it's gone in, and it feels snug. So that's definitely hopeful. So now the next trick is to get this hole to line up a little bit better. Now I can't put the screwdriver obviously because that's where I've got to put the new bolt. So we're gonna have to figure out a way to try to get this thing lined up and get that puppy in there. So let's see what we can do. Marginally better, but not a lot. All right, let's see if we can, what we can do for this guy. This caliper bracket. Okay, we get a straight shot here. Now I'm going to try to they're in. Hot dog. Praise the Lord. And I mean that. So all we got to do now is check the torque spec on those guys. If they're torqued in, then we're putting that motor mount back. Fantastic. I looked up the torque spec. 200 Newton meters or 148 foot-pounds. So let's see if we can get those things. I think I can get to this one okay. But getting to that far one is going to be more of a challenge. See what we can do here. I don't have a lot of, in fact, I don't know that I have any swing. Oh man, this is going to be a challenge. Let's see if I can get to it this way. It's my, well, this is a neat trick. How am I going to do this? Because my torque wrench is too long. 117. We're almost there. Yay, we're there. Okay. $128, we're almost there. Yay, we are there. Hot. Bolts are back in, and we can put this motor mount back, and this will ease my brain because I do not like having that car engine resting on that thing. I do not like having this car engine resting on that motor mount. Or excuse me, the weight of the engine resting on that block of wood on the oil, basically the oil pan. Okay, so now we can set that guy back down and we can get back on the road. Now the next part, as soon as we get that motor mount back in, the next part is going to be getting, we have to think kind of in two different things at once because we've replaced the control arm and we've also got to put this guy back. I forgot about that. We got to get him torqued back up. But the other thing we've got to do is we've got to aim for getting the new CV axle through that bearing, and we're going to have a clear shot to do that. And I also have to think about how we're going to get that such that we can put the axle back in through the hub. And I'm thinking, as more I look at this, it may not be possible to do that geometrically without taking the studs here off of the strut. I'm not seeing a way to do that yet. I may be wrong, but I don't know that it's possible. But I'm going to go ahead and get this guy back in and
take this load off my mind. Got this little mount wedged under a screwdriver, so when I set the engine back down, I don't want that. Ideally, I want that bolt, this mount, to line up directly. So I let the thing down. It doesn't rest on that thing. It rests on the whole thing, on captive. But to do that, I almost need for that to be spacered that way. Let me see if I can run just a little gap. It needs to be tilted up and across like that.
Okay, this is where I made life way too hard for myself. All I really needed to do was to take the top thread of that mount, put it through the engine mount, and then put the top screw on it, the top nut, and then lower the engine and let the bottom stud just fall into the subframe. But I got backwards on this, and I was so focused on getting it done this way, I lost sight of that. Oh well. Floor jack. It's not what I really need for something like this. You can use a floor jack. I wish I had one of those transmission lifts that has the spiral shaft where you can rotate it incrementally any number through a full 360 degrees of motion and control this. This is an older jack and I don't have quite that much precision. So let's go ahead and give this there. I think that did what I wanted. Let's look. Yeah, I think it's doing what we want. Yeah, I think we're home free. Ha-ha. Hot dog. We are home free. So all we need to do now is tighten up this bolt over here on the bushing and then reapply the bolts for the motor mount, and then we can get back to focusing on the CV axle and how we need to disassemble this guy to get the new ball joint through the control arm. Again, I'm trying to use this new camera to get you all a better angle because the big camera is just too big to get good shots in here. So trying the best we can. So going to take a short break and look up some torque specs for that motor mount, and we'll go from there. The torque specs on the bolts on the underside of the motor mount are 73 foot-pounds times 3. The torque spec for this guy is 100. So we're going to go ahead and apply that and get that knocked out. Yeah, we'll do the 73 for the motor mount first. Get that down to 73. And in fact, before we do that, we'll get those things. Yeah, we got the right one. Just had to get it started. There's one. But it's right through that little guy right there. If you can see that right through that hole. Perfect. And then the last one. Make sure I get this camera positioned. There. Oh. There we go. Now we're cooking. Now we can torque those puppies up. There we go. 73. Perfect. 73. In business. Look at this one here. Perfect. In business. That is back. Yay, raw. I believe that's a 19 actually. And I did not see a torque spec for this one.
All right. So that's spun down as far as it needs to go. And I do not intend to put there. All right. So the only thing that's left now is to put that thing up to 100. Okay. There's that. And then we will reset this to 100. Oh, I'm just turning the top, aren't I? There we go. All right. Control arm bolts are all torqued. We're good to go. And while we're down here, since we're done with those, we're going to go ahead and replace these little dust caps. I'm going to poke that guy right there and poke that guy right there. And we are officially done with the control arm. Hallelujah. Okay. So the next phase of our project is now going to be focusing on getting the new CV axle in and getting this ball joint into this bottom of the knuckle. Okay, I think I've got a strategy for how I'm going to do this. If I leave this as it is right now and I try to get this ball joint into the knuckle here, I think I run the real risk of having this so locked up that I won't have any freedom to adjust its position when I get the new CV axle in, and I won't be able to get the axle spline through the hub here. So I think what I'm going to have to do is take the knuckle, the steering knuckle, off of the strut, free this up, then I can put the ball joint into the hub here, and then still have this free to receive the axle, and then put it all back together, put it in the strut, and then we'll be good to go. There we go. There we go. All right. There's that. And we're going to probably need a hammer to knock this out. Oh, okay. I see a minor problem. I probably should have released this initially. Look here. There is the wheel speed sensor. That's on a wire that goes across here, and probably I need to disconnect that. I should have disconnected that wheel speed sensor to begin with. That looks like about a 10 millimeter fastener. A 10 millimeter wrench here. Oh, I went off camera for just a moment because I had ordered some proper caliper hangers, and they just showed up, so I got all that ridiculous wire off of the caliper and got it rehung, so it's now out of the way. We got a lot clearer shot here. So let's go ahead and get this ABS sensor, or brake speed sensor, excuse me. Wheel speed sensor. I don't know why I screw up those names all the time. Yeah, there we go. Make sure, I don't know if that's in shot, but that's what we're going to do. Okay, get that unscrewed. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Get that out of the way, and we're going to leave that screw in there. Actually, I'm going to take that out,
and I'm going to put it in my parts bowl, and we will get this out of harm's way. Here, so if that theory holds, I should be able to do this. Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I think I just saved myself a lot of headaches. So let's get the castle nut for the new ball joint. We found the castle nut. It was right where I thought it was. It was just hiding behind hiding behind one of these pieces of wood here. So just need the cotter pin, and we'll get that thing put in there. And I guess the additional advantage about putting this in this way is we can get this in, and we have full room to get it properly torqued. So I think this is the best way to do this. If I can just get the nut started now. There we go. Yeah, buddy. Very good. Need to go look up the torque spec on that puppy. It says here 91 foot-pounds with a new cotter pin. 91 foot-pounds. I think we can do that. Okay. So we will almost. Now, the question is, have we lined up our cotter pin slot? Or at least I thought we had. Oh no, there's the cotter pin hole. Okay, we're going to have to go a little bit farther. Not a lot, but a little bit. A little bit more. There we go. Hot dog. 91 foot-pounds plus. And we will put cotter pin through. And we will take our little hammer and go tappy tappy tap. There's that. And then we will just take the old hammer. There. That's in. So folks, we are at CV axle installation time. I believe that's where we are. We are now opening the new CV axle, which, if all goes according to plan, is our last step before we get this thing almost completely fixed. And installing it myself, because it's a little heavy and I'm doing this completely on my own. Getting it out was no big deal, but putting it back may be more of a challenge. We'll see. At this point, getting it out of the plastic packaging is a challenge. Now, this is the part that ruptured and was leaking all over the place on the original. Boy, there's nothing quite like an original new part. And this one, let me tell you, this was hard to find. I went through several different, and I think I mentioned this earlier, I went through several different part sources to find this transaxle. And I went through some Toyota dealers. And when you went to parts.toyota.com and you picked different vendors, different dealers, the part number would show up, but it would say not available to order. And I talked to a couple of places. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's on nationwide back order. It may be weeks." In fact, one guy told me that you could expect 2 to 3 months. Now, I did not want to be without a car for 2 or 3 months. So I got a hold of a Lexus dealer. I had been using an online parts place, which I won't name because I don't want to give them any benefit because they were a pain in the neck to deal with. They at least told me that they couldn't get it either. I contacted a local Lexus dealer, and they said that they didn't have one, but they could get one. And they said it would be here
in 24 hours if I ordered it before 3 o'clock that day, and I did. I grabbed it. That's an aside. So we got to put some transmission fluid back here. We got to put a little MP grease on the oil inlet, and then the kicker is going to be feeding it through there and keeping it level, and then putting back the secure bolt and the latch ring, and then reassembling it. We are desperately close to having this done, I hope. So here's just a little bit, and I mean just a little bit of grease. There. That's it. That's all I'm doing. And that's literally all it said to do, just on the outer part of that oil seal. And that's what I've done. Or excuse me, the inner part of the oil seal. And that's what I've done. So all that's left is to put a little ATF on the splines of the transaxle, or CV axle. Okay. We have found some automatic transmission fluid. Went ahead and got the kind appropriate for my particular transmission. The service manual, the service info on my car said that when you're reinstalling this thing, put some of this stuff on the spline. So that's what we're going to do. I tell you what, if you are a DIYer like me and you have to do some work like this on a car, I would strongly encourage you to consider getting either a 1 month or a 1 year subscription to the service data that is offered by places like I think AllData and Mitchell. They offer a DIY service where you can get all of the service data they have, just like a mechanic would have on a full subscription basis, but you can get it for like a month or maybe a year. And that's where I got all my torque specs, all of the details that I needed to do this job correctly. That's where I got it. It's well worth it. I went ahead and got a year because who knows what might be next for this car in the coming days or weeks. Oh no! Oh, you gotta be kidding me! You have got to be kidding me! Look at what I just discovered. This thing is all mashed. Oh my gosh.